Well, good morning. It's good to be with you all. It's good to see everybody, and good to be back. We were in Indianapolis for the week with 60. Well, I think yesterday it actually went up. It was 69,000 of our closest friends, and so registered for the FFA convention in downtown Indy. A lot of blue and gold, bouncing back and forth from Bankers Life Fieldhouse to the Lucas Oil Stadium and big cities. So we've kind of got. It's good to see some grass again, Barry. It's good to be back on the farm, and so we're glad to be back home. I appreciate all your prayers for safe travels whenever you have teenagers in those city environments. It's always exciting. But we always enjoy taking them to have new experiences. We have been for the past 3 weeks looking at a new series, and we've got one more installment of this next week, and so we're kind of in the middle. So if you haven't been here in a while, it's kind of like you're coming in the middle of the movie, and it's like, oh, wow. So you can pull these back up and watch these and kind of acquaint yourself, if you would. But the title of the series is called Entrusted, and it's a stewardship series, and this idea of stewardship not talked about a whole lot in our culture. And so we kind of wanted to introduce that term. Sometimes we try to hide those things or whatever, but I think it's a great term, something that we should understand, teach more, help folks to understand. Because in the society that we live in, we're very much about either we own it or we don't. And if we own things, we tend to take care of them, and if we don't, then it's a rental, right? And so it's like, well, that's kind of a different concept. But here's the biblical concept, the understanding is that you don't own nothing. Okay? You may think you do, but you don't. It's all God's, okay? It all belongs to Him, and you are simply a steward of what He has given you. And so sometimes you need to take that vantage point, kind of go out and look around at all the things that you think you have, and then ask how you're taking care of what God has given you. And that's a little bit of a gut check, and so you should do that from time to time and see how well you're managing those resources that God has given you. And that's what this whole series is about. We talked about the concept, the overall concept of stewardship in the first week. Last week, we looked at that hourglass, okay? Because we have to be good stewards of the time that God has given us. And we all have the same amount of time, right? And so as we go through our lives, we begin to see time differently, all right? And that's just part of it. It's part of life. It's part of, because, when you look at somebody, when you're 18 and you look at somebody who's 30 and you think they are so old, okay, right? And then when you are 50 looking back at 30, it's like, those are kids, right? And so that's just the way we do things, all right? That's just the way we look at life. And of course, I had this when I had kids in car seats, and some of you guys have kids in car seats. And so when you've got kids in car seats and you're carrying around the car seats, you're going, my gosh, is this ever going to end? Okay, you're like, I am so tired. I haven't slept through the night in forever, okay? And so you're living that life, and it's like, my gosh, is this ever? And then some old guy like me comes by and goes, oh, snap your fingers and it's over. And you're like, get away from me, okay? Because this is not ending, okay? This is going on forever, all right? And then all of a sudden, because I had that happen, right? And then now you're sitting here going, where did they go? Where did they go? And so you find yourself walking by and telling people, hey, snap your fingers. And it's over, it's gone. Okay, and so time is there. And the thing of it is, when we begin to think about time, we talked about this all last week. I like that hourglass symbol, because this is the thing about it. When we begin to think about our kids, or we begin to think about relationships, or we think about our childhood, or we think about, it can bring up a lot of regrets. Okay, and here's the thing I just want to remind you: you can't relive it. Okay. And some of you may try, okay, and so you're like zip lining at 90, and so that's okay, but that'd be fine. But you can't go back and correct a mistake, okay? You can't go back and spend more time with your kids, all right? You can't go back and do that. So don't beat yourself up. This is what God does for you. Every morning when you wake up, He flips the hourglass. Okay, when your eyes open, you take a breath of air and go, well, here I am. That's God saying, start over. Okay, this is your day. This is the day that the Lord hath made. Okay, and the hourglass is flipped, and you got it to live. So how are you going to use that time? How are you going to use that time? You can't change tomorrow, or you can't change yesterday. You can't go back and relive the past. But you can determine what you're going to do with the rest of the time that you have today and what you're going to have in the morning if he gives it to you. Okay? When you wake up in the morning, he says, there you go. Okay? So what are you going to do with it? So be a good steward of that time that he's given you. We looked at that last week and how important that is. Today, we're going to look at the second little symbol there, and this is our abilities. This is our person. This is our bodies. Okay, and this is all that we are, all that is self-contained in this shell. And so, what are you going to do with the talents? What are you going to do with your abilities? What are you going to do with all of the things that God has entrusted you with in your person? And so what I want to look at is a passage of Scripture here in just a moment that kind of gets us into this place. We talked about Operation Inasmuch being an awesome day. And here's the thing. We give of ourselves on that day, but what about the other 364 days of the year? Okay? And so this message today is not so much about your shape. Okay? We talked about your shape and your abilities, but this is more about the attitude. Okay? It's about the attitude of what we have and how we're using that for God. And because an opportunity or a day like Operation Inasmuch, what that did for us is to kind of put us into that environment. It puts you into that place, and at the end of that day, you come away from it going, this is pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome serving alongside God's people. It's pretty awesome serving God's people. And this is a pretty cool thing. And so we do that. But then we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing with everything that we have the rest of the time? And so how do you become the best steward of your own ability? How do you become that? And I think it all begins with attitude. And so I want to take a look at a couple of passages of Scripture, actually the same passage in a couple different versions. I think, Edwin, we have, let's go ahead and look at Romans 12:1, and we'll look at this from the NIV. And it says, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And Brother Steve reminded me of how this reads in the Message. And so, Edwin, could you put up that first slide, and let's look at how this same reads in the Message, because this is something that just kind of speaks. And I had read this before, and he reminded me of this, and we didn't have this at 8:30, but here it is. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you, take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Isn't that awesome? It does. It reads so awesome. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing that you can do for Him. And don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God, and you'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. All right? Now, that's our passage, and that's what, just let that speak to you a little bit this morning. Okay, this is what God wants from us. He wants us to be a living sacrifice. And the first step in that process is to be willing. The attitude in stewardship of ourselves is to be willing. He just wants your everyday, ordinary, walking around life to be lived for Him. Okay? And it's it's willingness. We go back and just pick up a piece of the Old Testament this morning, because the prophet Isaiah speaks to this, and I think this really is very plain spoken as well. Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 8 says, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me. That speaks volumes of a willing attitude. You see, when we are disciplined, we talked about this a little bit last week, when we are disciplined and we are in the Word, okay, when we are in the Word, when we are listening to what God is saying to us, when we are actively, readily reading and studying and praying and connecting, then God's going to call you, okay? Just be ready for that. Okay, just be ready for that. If you're actively engaging, okay, with the one who saved you, if you're actively engaging with the King of Kings, with the Lord of Lords, just be ready. He's going to engage you. Okay, He's going to engage you. He's not going to just let you sit and just enjoy the read. Okay, He's going to get, and so Isaiah is like, you have things that need to be accomplished. There are things that need to be done, and so here I am. You can send me. I'm willing to go. I'm willing to do. Use me. Okay, and so that first concept there is just having that willingness. Okay, the willing attitude to be ready to serve God as He calls us. There's so many problems in the world. There's so many things that are out there, and so it's easy to kind of get boxed into our own little thing. We kind of get in this idea that we have it pretty good and we deserve it. Okay, it's a little bit of entitlement. It's very easy to get pulled into an entitlement mentality. And it'll happen to you just like that. I mean, and this is the thing. We can fail to see what we have in front of us. The older I get, the harder it is for me to sleep out of my own bed. I like my own bed. Okay, it's comfortable, and I intend for it to be comfortable. I like it, and so it doesn't matter what hotel I go to, the nicest, the worst. You just never know, and so you just don't know. And those of you who travel a lot and understand this, and if you go into a hotel room and you lay down on the bed and it's like, this is not good. Okay, this is not going to be a good night's rest. I can just tell. This is like, awful. Okay, and then sometimes it's like, okay, this is bearable. Okay, but this is what I'm talking about with it, because we were staying in a pretty nice hotel in downtown Indy, and we've been there for a few days, and about the third day in, I'm going, oh, Lord, I just need a bed, this thing is horrible, what we were paying for it is looking at it like, are you serious, are you kidding, and so I was out with one of the other ag advisors, and he was telling me about a young student that he had with him, and he said, you know what, he said, you'll understand this, he said, because you travel as much as I do, and he said, she came to me this morning, and she said, this is such a great trip. And he said, really? He said, are you having fun? She said, I am. She said, I had the best night's sleep last night I've had in forever. And he's like, wow, really, And of course, they were staying out of town. And as he began, and he looked at me and said, you know what, Greg? He said, I don't think she has a bed. He said, I think she sleeps on an air mattress. And he said, she was in a real bed. And he said, so that was a big deal for her. We don't think about that sometimes. Those of us who have real beds, we just go get in them at night. We don't realize that not everybody has one, okay? And go outside the United States, and nobody has one, okay? Listen, come on, we've got it made here, and we feel like sometimes that we just expect it, and when we're like that, it's like, well, I'm just going to go enjoy my life, I'm just going to enjoy what I have, and I'm just going to spend my time and my money enjoying my things, and God's like, I blessed you for a reason, okay? I blessed you for a reason, and so you got to stay focused on that. Okay, there's things that needs to be done, and sometimes, and this is where I go with that, is we get to that place, and what happens is the problems of the world can become so increasing and so overwhelming that we put on blinders. Okay, we put on blinders, and I forget this sometimes because I can put on the blinders too. Pastor Greg can put on the blinders. When you take kids to a big city like we were in this week, there's always folks that either they're homeless or they appear homeless. We don't know the real thing, and so they present themselves in the streets and downtown. And when you're going out and going from the different places for all the kids, and so they're there. And when you do this as much as I do, and because every time I go, they're there, and so you just go and go and go so much, and it's like, okay, we got a schedule to keep, and we got to go. And you fail sometimes to realize that you have teenagers with you who've never been to a city before, and they're walking, going. And they're just blown away by it. And you think, how many things in life have I put my blinders on? And I just go. Okay? I just go. Because I got to be somewhere. And all of a sudden when you pull out of your comfort zone or you pull yourself out of your norm, and then it's like, what is this? Why are these people taking spoons and playing on plastic buckets? What are they doing? And we've heard it so much, I've seen it so much, it's just part of what you're going to run into, and you just go. And then you've got young people, and they're like, why? And so the world can become so difficult, and we can see so many needs out there that we can tend to put on blinders, and we can get to a place where it's like, I don't even know what I can do. And so here's the thing. When we're trying to be a steward of what God has given us, when we're trying to be a steward of our abilities, when we're trying to be this, don't get bogged down, okay? Here's the thing. You can't help everyone. You just need to know that. And here's the other thing that you need to know. God's not asking you to help everyone, but you can help one, okay? You can help one. When it comes to using your abilities to help, to make a difference, to impact, you see, you can help one. You can make a difference in one. And so never lose focus of that. I know sometimes that becomes cliche, and we're just like, oh, yeah, I know that. But don't get the blinders on and fail to make a difference, okay? Don't get to that point where you fail. I mean, I've got a lot of kids in my classroom. I can't do for all of them, okay? I remember when Miss Cox was at the high school, and she was really good friends with my mom when they were growing up and in school together. And her oldest daughter and I are the same age. And she said when she started teaching, she used to tell her, you can't bring them all home, okay? She would say, Stacy, you can't bring them all home with you, okay? But you may have to bring home one, okay? You can't do it for everyone, but you can do it for one. And that's what God kind of puts on our heart, is to do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Because if everyone did what they can for one, it will make a big difference in the world. There's 300 million people in America, okay? There are 300 million people in America. If everyone did what they could for just one person, we would not need the government to help take care of all of the things that we do. Okay, think about that for just a minute. We're, food stamps and welfare and all the things that we have would not be needed if every person who had been blessed took care of one, because it would be taken care of. But we fail to do for even one, and that's the mistake that we make. So do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and if that happens, because here's the thing: don't you wish you could send a gift to every kid at Christmas who's not going to get one? Okay. I mean, come on. I'm a soft heart, and when I get to Christmas time and you start thinking about kids that are going to wake up and have, and it's not, and it's like, man, I wish I could just fix all that. You can't fix all that, but you can fix one. You can take care of one. You can send one shoebox to one child on the other side of the world for just a few dollars, okay, and make a difference in that one kid's life. And you don't have to make a big deal out of it, but you can send one backpack to one child and make a difference in their lives, okay? That's all, and that's what God's asking you to do. He's not saying, hey, I'm calling you to feed the world. I'm calling you to send a gift to every child. He says, no, just pray and take care of one. And if everybody will listen, if everybody will do as He's called them, then everything will be taken care of. Do for one what you wish you could do. If you make a difference in one life, then you make a difference not just to that one, but more importantly, when you do that, it inspires others. Okay? Be an inspiration to your Christian brothers and sisters and say, look, here's a need. And you don't have to take them all in, but maybe you can take in one. We have 10,000 kids that are needing foster care in Kentucky right now. That's a lot of kids. Okay? You can't take all 10,000. And it's a tough thing. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you, okay? I've never done that. I've had children that are in foster care in my classrooms a lot. I walked alongside Pastor Troy when he did foster care for a long time, and I'm just going to tell you, it's frustrating. It ain't easy, all right? I ain't going to lie to you. I will not sugarcoat that for anybody and say, oh, yeah, let's go get you, just sign up and just jump right. Nuh-uh. That is not for the faint heart, okay? You better pray through that and be prepared, but listen, they're God's kids, okay? They're God's kids. And they need homes, and they need Christian parents who will love them, take care of them, and give them love, okay? And that's what they need. And it's not easy. I will not sit here and stand here and tell you that it is. It is not easy, but it doesn't mean that there's not the need, okay? The need is great. The need is large. And so God may be calling you to use your abilities, your home, to make a difference in one child's life. third and final thing that I want to look at this morning and to try to help you with is stay in the game, okay? Stay in the game. This is the biggest thing that when we talk about utilizing our abilities, okay? Now, we use this analogy a lot, and as you can tell, I am not a marathon runner, okay? Really not made for that, all right? You can probably tell, so I can't really tell you about running a marathon, but I can tell you about working in hay, okay? And because I grew up working in hay, and I'll never forget this. I learned this lesson when I was just a little kid on our farm. Papa was still alive, so this was pre-85, and so I was really young, and I remember he baled, he combine wheat's what he did, and he baled straw, and so we had this whole 20-acre field that was filled with straw bales, and the whole thing was completely full, and so we had this 2-ton truck and flatbed, and when you're putting straw on a 2-ton truck flatbed, it's not like these little nice wagons. It's a tall thing, and I was barely big enough to even pick one bale up, and I remember Papa got together this crew to go get the straw off the field. And so we go down, and I remember it was hot. It was middle of late June, early July, really crazy hot, and all these straw bales were all over the field. And because it was straw and not hay, it's lighter. Okay, so if you've ever worked in heavy hay, you know the difference. And so this one young man that came into the field, and I remember it really well, he came out and he picked up one of those bales of straw, and he was like, that thing's light, you know. So he picked up another bale, and so he had a bale in both hands. And he was coming to that truck, and he was like a crane, man. He was putting one bale on at a time, and I was like, and I seen Papa kind of looking at him going, you know, and so we start in on this field, and we're loading, you know, you get a truck loaded, and this is, you know, long story short, by 10 o'clock, he's sitting under a shade tree, overheated, okay, and he's out. That was it for him. He got 2 hours, okay. I mean, that was all he could do, and what the problem was is he was going too hard. He was just going too hard. The guys who stayed in it, one bale at a time, put it on the truck, one step at a time, and get the job done. Because here's the thing, by 10 o'clock, we were down a man. He was out of the game. He was done for the day. He was sick and overheated, and that was it. Guess what? Field was still full. There were still bales everywhere, okay? And so we had to get the job done. We had to continue with the harvest. We had to continue bringing everything in, and we were down somebody because he was not able to stay in the game with us. He was burned out by 10. Luke chapter 10 and verse 2 says this to us. He told them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Listen, the task that we have before us is great, okay? The task that we have before us is great. God calls us to use our abilities to serve him. He calls us to be, but this is what he's asking for us to do. He's asking for us to be a good steward of those abilities because he needs us for the whole time. He needs us to stay in the game. He doesn't need us burning white hot and then out, okay? He needs us to stay with it. You know, I learned this also from the Campers on Mission. What a great bunch of folks, because when I was talking about the entitlement earlier, these guys are folks who had worked their whole lives, and they had retired, and it's like, well, you could just go to the beach, okay? Or you could just go fishing. But instead, they bought campers and started traveling around building churches and building facilities for Christian facility and all these. And I'm like, that's interesting. You know, and so they came to New Harmony and they spent a summer with us, and I learned so much from them because when I looked at it, I was like, you guys don't have to do this. You choose to do this. Send me. Okay? I don't have to do, they didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. But this is one of the things that, of course, I was young and younger, and I was, when we were trying to get the job done, this is something that they taught me. And it was very valuable because they would come to work, and at 7:30, you know, they weren't getting paid. They weren't on the clock. But at 7:30, they started to work. At lunchtime, they stopped, and they gathered everybody together and had a devotion and prayer, and then they would eat, and they would go back to work. And at 3:30 in the afternoon, they quit. They put down their tools, and they went to rest. Now, I was not that smart, okay? I would work second shift, and I would stay working on the church, and I would go till midnight, and then I would sleep a little bit, and then I would go back again. But this is what they taught me. Okay, these guys were, you know, on up, and it was like, look, we can do that. We can work till midnight today, but not tomorrow, okay? Or maybe the rest of the week. But we can do this. We can't do everything in a day. We can't build this whole building in a day, but we can work 8 hours. And then we can rest, and we can recharge. And when God gives us tomorrow, we'll use it for Him again. And that was so valuable, okay? Because those guys were up in their years. I mean, some of these guys were in their 80s, and they're working up on top of the building, and they would give us the day. They would give us the day. They were good managers. They were good stewards of the health. They were good stewards of everything that they had been given, and they knew where the stopping point was. They knew that they had to sit down, and they knew they had to rest. So you got to stay in the game, all right? Because most pastors burn out. Most pastors burn out. One of the fastest growing churches in Nashville, this is like a year or so ago, one of the fastest, the guy just walks out one Sunday and said, I'm done. I'm burned out. And it's like, dude, it happens all the time. It's just, you can go as fast as you can, but when you reach a point, then there's no more. And so you have to do that. In everything that you do, you have to realize that there's a breaking point. There's an ending point, and you have to know what that is. You have to trust God to show you that. The most important thing is that you're aware of it. Because listen, He wants you to serve. He wants you to use your abilities, but you've got to be a good steward of those abilities. Because He doesn't just need you till 10 o'clock in the morning. The field is still filled, okay? The field is still needed to be harvested. He needs you to stay all day today and come back tomorrow. And so we have to be good stewards of the abilities that God has given us and a good manager of that. The laborers are few. And God wants to partner with us, but He needs us to stay in the game, the whole game, not just the first half. Because UK fans, we were reminded last night, it ain't over till it's over. Okay, it ain't over till it's over. That was because we were coming home from Indy last night, and we stopped in Greenwood, Indiana, and Michaela held her phone up, and she said, "Ain't looking good for the Mizzou game here." And I was like, "Ooh, that's ugly." I said, "That's a defensive struggle," and I hadn't even watched the game, hadn't even watched it, and so we're eating dinner, and then I pull up my phone to see what the final was, and I see this thing, and it's like, they won. I'm like, how did this happen? And then I'm looking at it, and I told her, I said, because I hadn't watched the game, I had no context whatsoever at all. I said, Michaela, this is really bizarre. She said, what? I said, well, they're playing the last play of the game, but there's no time on the clock. I said, how is that possible? How is it possible? How is it possible to still be in the game when there's no time left on the clock? It ain't over until it's over. And that's something that will speak to us, because God needs us available till the very end, okay? And it's not over until He says it's over. It's not over until He says that it's over. And so we have to be there to the end, and we have to work for Him, and we have to use what He's given us. We want you to be willing. We want you to do what you can for one, okay? Whether it's an entity or whether it's a person, or whether it's a task, or whether it's a job, or whether it's a ministry. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone, and remember to stay in the game. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. Pace yourself, however you understand that or learn that. But remind yourself that I can't do at this level forever, but I can stay here for a long time. When I sat at the rodeo the other night with my good friend Orville, Orville's been teaching for 39 years. He teaches in Lee County, and there's not much in Lee County, all right? And Orville loves his kids. He loves his students, and he takes them places they would never, ever, ever get to go. You saw him probably, if you watched on my Facebook, you saw him acting stupid out there because he loves his kids. He likes to make them laugh. It's the biggest thing they ever get to do. And it's like, Orville, how long are you going to do this? He's like, I don't know. 40 sounds good. Okay? He's been saying that next year sounds good. That's what he does. That's his life. Okay? That is his life. It's his ministry. It's everything that he is. And so he's learned to just stay in the game. He's learned to stay in the game for the long haul. And he's not burned out because he still loves what he does. Be willing, do for one, and stay in the game. And be the best steward of your abilities that you can possibly be. Let's pray. Father, I just pray that what we've shared today and what you've given to me just resonates in our hearts. Lord, I don't know where anyone is. I don't know what questions they're pondering. But Father, you do. You know where we are. You know where we are in the use of our abilities, and you know what our attitudes are. Father, it's so easy to get in this place in our lives that it's all about me, and it's all about me getting to a place to do what I want to do with what I have, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. It's all about you. It's all about your kingdom, and it's all about whatever that you have allowed me to do for you. So, Father, I pray that in us that you break our hearts, make us willing. Help us to have that Isaiah attitude of, here I am. You can send me if you want. I'll go. Help us, Father, to just be at a place, Father, where we don't burn out. Help us to stay in the game. And help us to do for one what we wish we could do for all of those that are around us. To make an example and to be an inspiration to others. Father, maybe there's somebody here that's just, because the other side of this is that we don't have a relationship with you. And then there's no fulfillment. Our lives are unfulfilled. We're trying to fill that life with whatever junk we can find, whatever Satan throws our way, and whether it's drugs or money, cars, whatever it is. Maybe there's someone here this morning that's just struggling and they just feel like their life is so empty, so undone. Father, usually when we look in that pit of things that we're trying to fill our lives with for fulfillment, it's sin. And maybe today, maybe in this moment, you're reaching down and saying, here I am. Come. And we can just lay that down and just walk away from it. And just embrace you, Father. Just say yes to a relationship that you offer, Father, because only you can give fulfillment to our lives. Lord, I just pray that in this time of reflection and invitation that we respond how you've called us. Father, help us to do that inventory of our lives. See how we're doing with what you've given us, how we're managing, how we're coming along. Maybe there's someone here that this is all completely brand new. And it's really refreshing because they're just looking to come home. They're just looking for someone to say, come here. It's going to be okay. I'm going to take away the pain. I'm going to take away the fear. He's already died for it. He's already paid the price for it. You can be free today. Lord, I pray that no one leaves this place today in bondage, but we all leave free and willing to serve, willing to use what you've given us. Father, I just pray now you guide us to respond how you've called us. We ask it, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you please stand?